First up, we've got some cable action. We're going to plug the C audio output back into the A audio input. Then I'm going to plug the MIDI output right back into the MIDI input. Some fun self-patching action. So I have this basic pattern on the first 4 tracks, and now I'm going to set up some machines to sample it. But first I'm going to go into the global menu. Generally, the easiest way to record a beat like this is to have the RAM record machine reference the main outputs, but I'd like to have a sampling bus. So I'm going to route all of these sounds out of the C output. Now I'm going to place the RAM record machine on track 5 and the RAM playback machine on track 6. I'm going to be using RAM record R1 and RAM playback P1. The pairs of machines share an audio buffer. Using multiple playback machines that reference the same RAM buffer is pretty fun. Since I'm only using the A input, I'm going to turn the input balance all the way to the left. Now it's time for a record trig and a playback trig, and I had those channels muted, so there we go. So now we have the live feed coming in through the RAM record machine and playback machine. Let's do a quick little test to verify this is the live feed. So with the way I have this configured right now, we can lower the pitch and still have playback occurring. It's sort of taking us backwards in time until the next playback trig occurs. Unless you've already kind of rewound your buffer a bit, you're not going to be able to pitch things up in this configuration. And once you have no information in your buffer to play back, you're out of luck. So this quirky behavior here, I don't fully understand. Right there at a start point of 86, playback stops, but the other start points before that don't seem to have much effect except right here. And we're hearing some aliasing noise coming from some quirk with what's going on here. The start point behaving this way is very strange to me. I would have expected for playback to stop immediately once the start point is no longer about 0 or 1. One nice thing about this configuration is it gives access to real-time bit reduction. The general technique of feeding a submix out of the machine drum and back in is pretty fun given the cool options for processing. Also realize that although the RAM record and RAM playback audio pass-through reduces the sound quality, if you were to do the same submix processing using one of the input machines, you would still have full audio quality. Here I am copying my RAM record machine from track 5, and I'm duplicating it onto track 7. The reason I'm doing this is to show a particular quirk in this use case. I myself only recently gained a firmer understanding of how this works. So let's repeat the muting test that we were using earlier. Huh, that doesn't quite seem like live input. So what's going on here exactly? It's almost like we're getting delayed by an entire recording length. So when an instrument is on a higher numbered track, the trigs for that instrument will get evaluated and executed slightly after trigs on earlier instrument tracks. You can see in this configuration that we can actually pitch up the audio buffer and still get playback. This is due to the relationship of the playback and recording heads of the audio buffer. With this reversed loop example, we can actually gain a little bit more insight into what's happening. Essentially, we're able to play through the rear half of the loop before the playback heads and recording heads meet in the middle. I wish I had greater insight into the internal logic of the machine drum to understand these behaviors better. Okay, let's go into the global menu and give us a reason for why we even have that MIDI cable plugged in there. Since we can trigger tracks with MIDI notes, we can also trigger RAM recording machines with MIDI notes. I'm just going to set this to the lowest MIDI note value. When setting this up, also make sure to remove any trigs from the RAM machine tracks so that you do not accidentally double trig recording. Now I'm going to add a MIDI machine, which will allow me to trigger the RAM record machine. Since I'm using bass channels 1 through 4, I could use any of the MIDI machines 1 through 4. The MIDI notes set in the map editor can be received on any of the bass channels. Now I need to add a Control 8P machine, which will allow me to modulate the note value of the MIDI machine. So now I need to assign the Control 8P machine to the correct parameter on the MIDI machine track. Now I'll go to the LFO on the MIDI machine track and assign that to the Control 8P machine. Unfortunately, adding a control machine to a track removes the LFO on that track. I'm going to set it to the random waveform for probabilistic behavior and putting it on hold. You could use the regular shapes for patterned behavior as well. I turned the speed and depth all the way up because it's not too important what they are set for this application right now. Check out my other video on machine drum generative sequencing if you'd like to learn more about this aspect. So all these trigs on this MIDI track are places in the pattern where resampling can potentially be triggered. Since the machine drum does not have independent track lengths for its sequencer, other methods for making this technique interesting have to be employed. So let's see what we can get out of this setup. I hadn't set this up in a minute, so it took a little bit of tweaking, but there we go. That's the point I was trying to get to. We're getting probabilistic dropouts of the audio due to the relationship of the randomly triggering record trigs and the playback trig. Since my recording trigs are actually on a MIDI track on track 16, I'm pretty sure I'm always going to be engaging recording after playback has already started. It's also possible that with the latency introduced by the MIDI loopback, that the recording will always be started after the playback trig has been triggered, but I haven't confirmed that yet. This is similar to micro-timing related record and playback trigs on the Octatrack. However, I think the timing difference here is even smaller than the micro-timing step difference possible on the Octatrack. So now I have the RAM record machine on a higher numbered track, but it's not making anything different since the record trigs are really on the MIDI track. Going to put some extra playback trigs down. Might as well P-lock some of them. So now that there's more variation and sample playback changes, the different parts of the loop that get recorded into the RAM machine express themselves more strongly. And we're getting a probabilistic variation on what parts of the loop we're hearing. Try P-locking some start and end points. So now I want to hear the original loop layered with this. So I'm going to put an input machine on track 8. I'm just going to use a regular gate input machine. And now I need to get that triggered. You can hear that the sound is full quality and doesn't have that 12-bit crunch from running through the RAM machines. I'm going to just tweak it a little bit here, make it sound a little more interesting. Oh, I didn't realize I was in grid recording mode. I thought I just triggered it. Might as well just remove that. It already did its job. Let's filter out that low end. Time to mute some sounds. I think it's time to change the placement of the recording triggers on the MIDI track. Now time for some more sound design. Getting sick of that ring modulated sine wave sound. Some P-locks on this playback track will be good. Time for some LFO action. I'll put that on the start. Put some pan P-locks in. Sine wave sound a bit. It's a pretty important source sound that has a large effect due to its long decay. It's interesting to see how changing the source material will change things up. The Machinedrum offers very extensive options for sculpting the sounds. machine.